the third lesson on security aspects. This is CIE Computer Science. I'm Surajwati from Master Computer Science channel. Let's see the learning outcomes of this lesson. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to describe asymmetric encryption, describe the SSL and TLS methods for Internet security, explain what is meant by DOS attack, and we'll see if we can cover some biometric methods that can be used for computer security in the next lesson. But the last learning outcome will be covered when we cover input and output devices. All notes are being sponsored by Computer Science GCSE Guru. Last week we have studied about symmetric encryption. Encryption is about message hiding by scrambling text or files. As we have studied last week, using symmetric encryption, where we have a sender and then a recipient or receiver, if we send the plain text normally through a network, a third person normally may intercept this data and look at the data, which can be private. However, when sender is sending the information to recipient, he can use a symmetric encryption method. In this case, we use a plain text. We encrypt it using a key. The key is the same key that is used for encryption and decryption. The sender will use same key to encrypt. The receiver will use the same key to decrypt. The plain text is encrypted. They are scrambled. The text is scrambled to produce a ciphertext. On the receiver end, the ciphertext is decrypted to get the plain text. So even if a third person tries to read the ciphertext, it will be meaningless because it is not the original text. And we have seen that in symmetric encryption, normally to share the key, it gives rise to a key distribution problem because sender and receiver must share the key without a third person intercepting the key. Now, coming to the second method of encryption, which is asymmetric encryption. In asymmetric encryption, also known as public key encryption, it is a form of encryption where a pair of keys are responsible for encrypting and decrypting data. Compared to symmetric encryption, which uses only one key, asymmetric encryption, it uses two keys. Now, what are those two keys is what you're going to study next. There are two pairs of keys used in asymmetric encryption. One is known as a public key and the other one is known as private key. What is a public key? It is provided by the recipient. It can be given to anyone who wishes to send encrypted data to the recipient. It is safe to share as all it can do is encrypt data. I want you to look at the public key in terms of an encryption key. It doesn't matter who has the encryption key because no one will be able to read the original message unless they have the decryption key. So the public key here is an encryption key that can be made available to everyone. Now the private key, it remains private on the sender side. I mean here sender, the one who is supposed to receive the private information. So it remains private on the computer, never sent or shared. Only this key can decrypt the data encrypted using the public key. So here the private key is the decryption key. Now let's look at a simple diagram to understand this concept. Bob creates a pair of keys, one of which he keeps secret and one which he sends to Alice. So here you have Bob and then Bob is here and here you have Alice. Now Bob will create two keys, one the public, which is an encryption key, and one is private, which is confidential for Bob. So Bob sends that key to Alice so that he can encrypt his message. In this case, Bob selects a public and a private key. He sent the public key to Alice, knowing that it will be intercepted by Eve. Now, Eve, even he intercepts the encrypted data, he won't be able to read it without the private key, because the private key remains at Bob's side. Now, upon receiving, Alice will use her public key to encrypt the confidential message and send it to Bob. So the confidential message go on. Even Eve intercepts that, he doesn't have the decryption key, which is a private key. So it will be still a ciphertext, not being understood by Eve. The information goes on and it reaches Bob without being intercepted. So these are the 4 scenarios that you need to understand in asymmetric encryption. Bob creates a pair of keys, one of which he keeps secret, which is a private key, and one of which he sends to Alice. Alice composes a confidential message and encrypts it using the key that Bob has sent to her. Alice sends the encrypted data to Bob. Bob uses his secret key to decrypt the data and reads the confidential message. So before we move on to SSL, it's very important that you understand in asymmetric encryption, 2 pair of keys are used. One is public and the other one is private. The public key is known as an encryption key. The private key is known as a decryption key. The public key is known to the public and it can be used to encrypt any message that is intended for the receiver. But to decrypt the message, only the private key is needed on the receiver side, and this is not shared.